would like to complete your ensemble?
Oh, no. There's something else of yours that I want.
Oh, really? What's that?
Your ass!
There are movies that entertain you, and then there are movies that become a piece of living history. Films so chaotic, so unplanned, and so gloriously out of control that the stories behind them are more interesting than anything on the screen. The Cannonball Run is exactly that kind of movie. Released in 1981, it packed some of Hollywood's biggest names into fast cars, pointed them across the country, and somehow turned the whole thing into one of the most beloved comedies of its era. But here's the thing, most people who have seen this film, even the ones who have watched it a dozen times, have absolutely no idea what was really going on behind the scenes. The secrets buried inside this production are stranger, funnier, sadder, and more surprising than anything Burt Reynolds ever did on camera. So buckle up, because we are about to take a ride through everything you never noticed about the Cannonball Run. Before there was a movie, before there was a script, before anyone in Hollywood had even dreamed of turning this story into a comedy, there was a man named Brock Yates sitting behind the wheel of a car, about to do something completely illegal. Yates was a prominent automotive journalist working for Car and Driver magazine in the early 1970s, and he had grown absolutely fed up with the United States government's decision to impose a national speed limit. To Yates, this wasn't just an inconvenience, it was an insult to skilled drivers everywhere, a bureaucratic overreach that treated every American motorist like an incompetent teenager who couldn't be trusted on the open road. So in 1971, Yates did what any reasonable, rational person would do in his situation. He called up legendary racing driver Dan Gurney, climbed into a car, and drove from New York City to Redondo Beach, California as fast as humanly possible. No permits, no official sanction, no concern whatsoever for whatever the highway patrol might think about the whole arrangement. They completed the coast-to-coast run in just under 36 hours, and Yates called it the Cannonball Baker Sea to Shining Sea Memorial Trophy Dash, a gloriously ridiculous name for a gloriously ridiculous act of vehicular rebellion. What Yates probably did not expect was that his little protest would catch fire the way it did. Word spread through the automotive underground, and over the next several years, the Cannonball became a genuine phenomenon. Multiple iterations of the race followed, each one attracting more drivers, more elaborate vehicles, and more creative attempts to outsmart the law. Competitors showed up in exotic European sports cars, souped-up American muscle machines, and, in one of the most audacious moves in the history of transportation, a fully operational ambulance, complete with flashing lights, a fake patient in the back, and a team dressed in medical uniforms who successfully convinced multiple police officers that they were on a genuine emergency run. The beauty of the original Cannonball was that it had no rules, no governing body, and no safety net. It was pure, unfiltered American rebellion dressed up as a sporting event, and the country absolutely loved it. When Hollywood eventually came knocking, the job of turning this story into a film fell to Hal Needham, a director who had spent decades as one of the most daring stuntmen in the business. Needham understood instinctively that the Cannonball's appeal wasn't really about cars or speed, it was about attitude. It was about the gleeful refusal to be told what you could and couldn't do. That spirit, more than any specific plot point or character, became the beating heart of the 1981 film. One of the most quietly remarkable things about the Cannonball Run is that the man who invented the entire concept, Brock Yates himself, actually appears in the movie. Not in a starring role, not even in a role that gets mentioned in any interview or promotional material from the time. He simply shows up, plays a race official in the background, and goes about his business as though this were completely normal. And in a sense, it was completely normal, because Yates was doing in the movie exactly what he had done in real life, organizing the Cannonball. He had invented it, he had driven in it, and now he was watching Hollywood recreate it with Burt Reynolds and a cast of comedy legends, and he was standing right there in the middle of it. There is something poetic about that detail that tends to get lost in conversations about the film. The Cannonball Run is not a movie that invented something from scratch. It is a dramatization of actual events involving actual people, and one of those actual people was quiet enough, and perhaps humble enough, to simply take a small role and let the professionals handle the rest. Yates never made a big deal of his cameo. He wasn't there to steal scenes or remind everyone that none of this would exist without him. He was there because he loved the Cannonball, and being on set was just another way of being part of it. Speaking of the ambulance, Here is a detail that almost nobody knows, and it is genuinely extraordinary. The battered Dodge ambulance that appears in the film, the one that Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise drive while wearing doctor costumes and pretending to be on emergency medical business, was not a prop vehicle sourced from a studio warehouse. It was the actual ambulance that Brock Yates and Hal Needham had used in the real 1979 Cannonball race. Think about that for a moment. Yates and Needham had purchased a functioning ambulance, recruited a fake doctor, installed a patient in the back, and driven that vehicle across the United States in a completely illegal race, successfully fooling law enforcement along the way. Then, when it came time to make a movie about the Cannonball, they went back and got the same vehicle, the one that had already lived through the real thing, and put it back on screen. The ambulance had already done the actual job before it became a movie prop. Near Palm Springs during the real race, the vehicle had even caught fire from overheating in the desert heat, and the team had pushed through anyway and finished the run. So when audiences watched that ambulance bouncing across the screen in 1981, they were looking at a vehicle with a genuine story. Every dent, every scratch, every bit of wear on that Dodge was earned on an actual cross-country run. It was, in the truest possible sense, the real deal. Burt Reynolds was, in the early 1980s, arguably the biggest movie star in the world. His combination of charm, physicality, and effortless comedy had made him a phenomenon, and his friendship with director Hal Needham. They had worked together on Smokey and the Bandit and developed genuine trust in each other over years of collaboration, made it feel natural that he would sign on for the Cannonball Run when Needham came calling. The problem was that Reynolds apparently said yes before he really understood what he was saying yes to. Once filming began and he got a proper look at the script, Reynolds was not impressed. In later interviews, he was remarkably candid about his feelings toward the film, calling it one of the decisions he was least proud of in his entire career. He found the material too broad, too silly, and too reliant on the kind of lazy comedy that he didn't think was worthy of the cast assembled to perform it. He made no secret of the fact that the paycheck and his loyalty to Needham were the primary reasons he showed up every day. And yet, and this is the part that makes the whole story so deliciously complicated, audiences disagreed with him completely. The Cannonball Run was a massive box office success. It made an enormous amount of money, it connected with viewers in a way that more carefully crafted films sometimes fail to do, and it remains one of the most affectionately remembered comedies of its decade. The very film that Reynolds found embarrassing turned out to be one that fans never stopped loving. There is a lesson in that somewhere about the difference between what artists think they're making and what audiences actually receive. If Burt Reynolds was unhappy with the film from the beginning, Farrah Fawcett had a completely different problem. She didn't understand what the film was until it was over. Fawcett, who had become famous for her role on Charlie's Angels and was considered one of the most recognizable faces in American entertainment, read the script and came away with the impression that she was signing on for something with genuine dramatic weight. The script involved fast cars, a love story, and a cross-country journey, and somehow she interpreted that combination as pointing toward a serious road movie rather than an all-out comedy. No one corrected her misunderstanding. So Fawcett showed up on set and played her role with complete sincerity, treating every scene as though it had real emotional stakes. Meanwhile, around her, Dean Martin was arriving in a priest costume while visibly drunk, Sammy Davis Jr. was improvising jokes between takes, Dom DeLuise was dissolving into helpless laughter every few minutes, and the entire production was operating with the organized chaos of a particularly energetic birthday party. Fawcett saw all of this and apparently assumed the tone would become clearer as filming progressed. It did not. She reportedly did not fully grasp that she had been in a broad comedy until she attended the film's premiere and watched the finished product with an audience that was laughing from start to finish. The remarkable thing, and this is a genuine testament to what committed, instinct-driven performance can do, is that her confusion actually improved the movie. By playing her character completely straight while everyone around her descended into absurdity, Fawcett created a comic contrast that made the comedy around her land even harder. She was the straight woman without knowing she was the straight woman, and it worked perfectly. Sammy Davis Jr. was not supposed to be in the Cannonball Run. The role that he ultimately played, one half of a comedy duo with Dean Martin, both of them dressed as priests and improvising their way through scene after scene, was originally written for Don Rickles, the legendary insult comedian. Rickles dropped out at the last minute, leaving the production with a significant gap in its cast at a moment when there wasn't much time to fill it. Davis stepped in with virtually no preparation time, and what followed was one of those rare instances in film history where a piece of last-minute casting produces results that far exceed anything the original plan might have delivered. Davis brought an energy and spontaneity to his scenes that felt completely alive, partly because he genuinely was improvising much of his dialogue and partly because his chemistry with Dean Martin, a friendship that had been developing for decades through their years together in the Rat Pack, was entirely authentic. They weren't performing a friendship on camera. They were expressing one. His scenes became some of the most quoted and remembered moments in the film. When you talk to people who love the Cannonball Run, Davis's performance is almost always among the first things they mention. The actor who was never supposed to be there ended up being one of the primary reasons anyone still talks about the film. There is a moment while watching the Cannonball Run when you might notice that Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. seem slightly too comfortable, slightly too loose, slightly too genuinely amused by everything happening around them. That observation is entirely correct. The drinks in their hands during filming were not props filled with apple juice or cold tea. They were actual alcoholic beverages, and the two performers were consuming them between takes and sometimes during them. Director Hal Needham, a man who had spent his career doing physically dangerous things for other people's movies and had developed a very high tolerance for unpredictability, watched what was happening and made a decision that would prove to be one of the smartest calls in the film's production. Rather than intervene, he simply let the cameras keep rolling. He understood that the loose, unpredictable energy Martin and Davis were generating was something no script could produce. It was the product of genuine comfort, genuine friendship, and a genuine willingness to be completely ridiculous in front of an audience.